they perceive lean construction and what benefits they got from lean practices. And they will also give some advice to the construction teams. Good morning once again to all of you. Hope you had a good break, but not breaking away from the lean practices. We now have a very interesting session for you all. Listen to the leaders, directors speak. The top managers from the leading construction companies who are charter members of ILCE will now talk on how they perceive lean construction and what benefits they got from lean practices. And they will also give some advice to the construction teams on how to go about. Now we have a talk from Mr. Subodh Dikshit, Executive Director, Shapoorji Pallonji. Mr. Dikshit.
Hello everybody. I'm very glad to be part of this conversation today because one is I'm a practicing construction manager and also I represent Shapoorji Pallonji, who is founder member of ILCE. So the subject is very close to my heart. And thank you so much for giving me this opportunity for sharing my thoughts and some of the ideas which I continuously have been discussing with many people during a conversation on lean construction. If you look at any of the construction site in India, and if you look at the people involved in construction on the site, you generally find a lot of harassed look on their face. And one of the reasons probably is they are constantly on the firefighting mode. And what it translates into it, long working hours, very unsettled way of executing things, and at the end of the day, a very unsatisfied person. Whether it's an engineer or a supervisor or an architect or anybody who is involved in the entire execution chain. So there is something amiss. There is something amiss in this industry. And I think the fundamental reason is this fraternity has very unorganized way of working. And traditionally the issue is also because the bandwidth of the people who are involved in this. You have a very unskilled labor on the site to the CEO of organization, whether it is from the client side or from the company side, everybody involved in creating the product. So your level of understanding of how to do things varies drastically. Now, if you look at the construction world across the world, India would be probably not even 1/10 of their productive work of executing things. Productivity is so low in India. Now we all also marvel that few years back, or rather few decades back, manufacturing was in the same state, but then the computation heated up, world opened up, the market prices came down, the quality of product went up, delivery time became very, very important and sacrosanct, and that made manufacturing industry think in improving their processes of creating a quality product, a cost-effective product, and product which is delivered on time. We also, and I'm sure everybody who's sitting here and who's part of our industry, sit in this recognition. Our wish list is the same. Not that we don't wish to do that. We wish to do that. Traditionally, we all keep thinking that construction industry is a very difficult industry, and I think this is how the way of life is in construction industry. It may be to some degree true, because it's indeed a difficult industry, because you have to move to various places. The geographical spread is big. You may have to work in harsh conditions. You may have to work long working hours. And every time there's a project which starts, you are starting all over again. So it's a difficult industry. You have many stakeholders to deal with. But that doesn't mean that we cannot improve. I think what is required is sitting with the recognition that we need to improve. Sitting in the acknowledgement that yes, there is a scope to improve, but we are not probably reflecting on what should be done, or reflecting on what has gone wrong in the past while we were doing some activities. Once this will dawn on us, when we recognize this, I think we have started our first step. We started our first step in lean construction. So one fundamental point is, let us sit in this recognition that we need to improve, and there are ways and means to improve. ILCE is exactly trying to do that and achieve that. How do we improve? I think this is one major question that comes. So what we need to do is, for any improvement, we need to identify the value. Identification of value, what you are going to create, is extremely important. Because if we don't see this value coming out of any exercise, we as a human being or otherwise like any other person, very reluctant to march in that direction. So we need to identify the value which we want to create. Once we identify the value which we want to create, then we need to define the flow of work process. How the flow of work is going to happen to create that value. We need to identify what are the ingredients in that work process. Once we do that, we will be doing right planning and scheduling. And I am a firm believer that planning is an extremely important ingredient in doing any activities right. But right planning and scheduling will only happen when we sit and identify how is our flow of doing things happen. Wrong identification is not going to lead us to right planning and scheduling. So we do planning and scheduling, which is a third step. Then we need to create a flow chart. And the flow chart is not only for restricted manner from point of view of only site engineer. It's a flow chart of entire activity starting from the concept to delivery. The whole flow chart. Every stakeholder who is involved in this is an important ingredient in creating a product which is lean. So let us then do a flow chart of that. And once the flow chart has happened, implement that and improvement begins. And once the improvement begins, we need to keep revisiting on further refining that skill. I think this whole concept has to be understood. Now, lean construction methods, world over, have come out with many processes which can lead in this direction. And these processes are daily work processes which will help one achieve good results. Now, if you look at any activity, and especially so in construction, there's one fundamental difference between manufacturing and construction. In construction, you go through the product. Product doesn't go through you. So once you go through the product, it is a very dynamic process every single hour, because variables are different. What we need to do is, in each activity, there are multiple sub-activities, and sum of all these activity creates the product. So we need to start from the last activity standing there. Plan how to do it well. Then all other activities or sub-activities involved in creating one major activity, all those activities also need to be perfected. Once we do that, that one activity will reach to some level of perfection. And then sum total of all the activities involved will create final good product. So it is a bottom-up exercise. And once we say it is a bottom-up exercise, and why I'm trying to emphasize is this. Of course, the thrust has to come from leadership, senior management of any organization, but there has to be a buy-in by the people who are really going to work on it. The project managers, the construction managers, the supervisors, the foremen, they all have to have a buy-in on this concept, because finally they are going to implement this. And small victories in achieving some targets from one sub-activity, which will give a kind of a pride and satisfaction to the person who is executing that work, will spread amongst all his colleagues, and they will try to then replicate this. Because let me tell you, nobody dislikes success. So success will rub on another guy's, and his colleague will also strive to do better. And that's how this whole fever has to catch up. Lean construction practices will give you tools. Lean practices methods will give you processes. It will give you flow chart. It will give direction. But unless the person who is going to execute it does not derive a visible benefit out of what he is doing, it is not going to happen. So fundamentally, I think small victories have to be celebrated. They have to be acknowledged by the staff who is on the ground, and then it will get up and probably spread across the whole setup, and then from one project to another project, from one organization to another organization, and across. So lean practices is one very important criteria which will help us achieve quality of product, a safe working environment, very little wastage or minimum wastage, completion on time, and cost controls. And at the end of the day, a very satisfied client. and also at the end of the day, a very satisfied engineer. So I'm very happy here today to share with you from ILC platform also and from my own experience that we have undertaken many sites and tried these practices there. And I have seen success stories there. And I have also interacted with the engineers who were involved in implementing this on site. And I can see the twinkle in their eyes that yes, it has worked and they could get benefit out of it. Now this gentleman, when he goes to another site, another project, he carries this knowledge with him. And he has tasted the success. So he's trying to now going to propagate among his new colleagues, or maybe he has some colleagues which are who have already done this and practiced. And they will start educating others and propagate on the next project. And then it will spread. And this is what we desire to do, that it spreads across. It spreads across as a phenomenon that lean practices help us achieve a product which is we are proud of. From this platform also I would like to express, because I'm sure there will be some of the government authorities and state authorities may be part of this. We will request them to also give us a good fillip in this direction. We are at ILC happy to impart this knowledge everywhere, in government organizations also, and probably have some kind of a interaction, seminars, workshops. Also my request would be that how do we, like GRIA or LEED, create a rating for creating a good lean practice environment in the organization. So maybe one can think about how do we bring this into contractual model where lean practices is emphasized upon, so that one is the implementation which comes from within the organization, but also it becomes a requirement from authorities or the end user, so that entire supply chain, all the stakeholders become part of this practice. With that, I would like once again to emphasize that I think this is the time when everyone is trying to complete the project on time, quality, in safe working environment, and in cost. There is no better way of doing it than adopting lean practices. So let us try to march in this direction. Thank you so much for listening to me, and I'm very glad to share my ideas with you. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Subodh Dikshit. Now we have a talk from Mr. Giridhar Rajagopalan, Deputy Managing Director, Afcons Infrastructure. Mr. Giridhar, please.